Trojan fans, welcome to another edition of the Peristyle Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, joined alongside Mr. Triple Double himself, Connor Morrissette. What's up, Connor? How you doing, man?
Doing well. Too bad that Super Bowl was such a bust. We were just discussing that. I was looking for a more competitive game, but I guess after three pretty good ones in a row, we were due for a dud.
34-0 at one point. You know the worst part?
The Eagles fans getting to celebrate?
No, that's okay. I don't mind that. I was in a squares game and wasn't like close to anything. And then at the end, I had the right score, except for that superfluous Hail Mary that Mahomes threw.
Yeah, right at the end.
So that screwed me out of that. I think I don't know what it was. I didn't even ask, but I think it was like $250 or something. So I'm like, damn it. But whatever. But yeah, it wasn't a very exciting game. Eat some food, have some beers, and just kind of move on. And unfortunately, that's the last real football we get for quite a while.
I know, until the spring game.
Yeah. But we wanted to do a little off-season show. We're going to keep doing them throughout the off-season. And today's theme is going to be about things that are exciting about this upcoming season that Connor and I feel are really exciting, and a few things that would potentially concern us. So we both came up with our own list. We haven't looked at them yet, so we'll see where those end up going. We are live on YouTube. I tried to go live on Facebook. The program we were using was having issues with that, and I apologize if we're not over there, but we are live on YouTube. So if you're in there, get in the chat. Thanks very much. We don't have a lot of questions today, so you can put some questions in the chat. I will star them and get back to them later. If you do want to send us a question ahead of time, podcast@uscfootball.com is the email address, or you can text us or call us. 424-254-9141 is the number. And of course, we love the reviews, 5-star ratings, all that stuff on Apple Podcasts. You can rate us on Spotify as well, wherever you're listening to the podcast. We got a bunch of listeners, Connor, people just listen on their headphones, going for a jog or mowing the lawn or whatever. And then a lot of people that like to watch the videos on YouTube. So we try to give you the best of both worlds and give you options when you want to consume the Peristyle Podcast.
I do a little bit of both, too. Sometimes when I listen back, if I'm on a walk, I'll do Spotify. But if I'm at the desk, I'll head over to YouTube and watch it and see me and you make some funny faces.
Yeah. Mark's in the chat. He says, hello, Ryan, and Triple Double. He also says halftime was the worst part. Like, I don't think Kendrick Lamar is like in my, like, I wasn't the target audience there. I only know a little bit of the music, but like, it's usually from watching football practices and they're playing that, like the They Not Like Us one. I've heard that a bunch of times. Didn't realize that was like a diss track for Drake. So I don't know like everything.
You didn't know that was a diss track for Drake? Where have you been?
I don't know these things. I'm not, I'm an old dude, but yeah, but I've heard that song at football practices and stuff, but I don't know, controversy, but whatever. I just didn't, what did you think of it?
I stepped out. I went on a walk, stretched my legs. Usually I would watch the halftime show, but yeah, I guess I wasn't totally interested this year, and I should watch it on YouTube. I don't even know the half of it. I haven't even seen it, so
okay.
I got to watch it.
No, that's all right. Yeah, but I don't know the whole beef with the diss tracks and things, and I was like, what is going on here? I'm not involved in all that. I don't really know, but some people were really fired up about it, but whatever, it's fine. The game just sucked. That was the most important thing to me. I want to thank our sponsor, Trader Joe's. I literally just came from Trader Joe's. So thanks. I mean, I don't know how many years it's been, like 6 years or something. They've been with the show. Of course, it's like Valentine's Day week. That's a big deal. The flowers, we always tell you about the flowers. I mean, I went in there and they have some special flowers, like especially for Valentine's Day, which is great. And they have even like small little bouquets that are like $3.99, like just something pretty and nice and small if you want to give it to your postal carrier or whatever. I don't know, anything you want to do. Like there's a wide range of flowers over there at Trader Joe's, and some different ones they have. If you want to arrange your own, they had some fillers that you could put in. So if you have like a favorite color or something, they had like these purple ones and a bunch of tulips. They had a whole bunch of different types of flowers over there. So that's cool. And then a lot of really interesting snacks. They're like frozen heart-shaped macaroons. They have a bunch of little candies, anything that has like Valentine's Day sort of spirit to it. So there's a lot of different stuff there. So if you're not sure for your special someone for Valentine's Day, I would just walk through the Trader Joe's aisles because there's a lot of different options you have in there, Connor.
Can't go wrong with the flowers. You're right, especially those ones that aren't too expensive. And you can get really nicer bouquets for just a little bit more money. So why not go over there and knock out your grocery shopping and your flower shopping all at one spot?
Go check it out. But thanks again to Trader Joe's for being with us for so long. They are great. Have a lot of fun with them. And yeah, they've been awesome. So thank you to Trader Joe's. All right. Well, let's get in to the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about today. So there was a lot going on last week with the press conference, and we got to hear from new coaches. I mean, of course, did it get better than like Rob Ryan up there? But, hearing Chad Bowden for the first time, Chad Savage, talking about the tight ends and inside receivers, Javon Reed, the kind of stories he has, the Southern accent, all of that stuff was fun. So we got to hear that. And Lincoln Riley talked for quite a while as well. So we went into that right away. So we came in here to the studio literally right after the press conference. You kind of got our reaction. I know the other podcasts have kind of talked about it a little bit too. I was listening to Chris and Shotgun on the Helium Boys. They were down in Atlanta. Shotgun brought Chris some matching socks, and Chris held up a sign that says Helium Boy wanted or something, or at picking him up at the airport. They're weird. That's a whole other dynamic. Don't expect that up from me and Connor. But they were talking about it too. Some of the interesting aspects of what was going on. So you kind of get a lot of reaction to that. Now that it's marinated a little while. Any other thoughts you had about the press conference day or what we've seen since then?
I still just think with USC, what do they need to do to consistently compete for a Big Ten championship, consistently be in that college football playoff discussion, and the roster, the talent evaluation, NIL, getting the best players to come play for USC is the most important thing, because I think we'd both agree, Ryan, the coaching staff is a really talented group. Defensively, those guys are awesome. Lincoln Riley, he's sort of yo-yoed a little bit up and down in terms of the offenses he's had at USC these past 3 years, but we all know he's a great coach, so I don't expect him to not adjust and continue to throw the ball too much next season. What's really the biggest missing piece with the last two teams, and it's just been impact guys and getting the best possible players to USC, and hopefully with all these personnel staff additions, Chad Bowden, Dre Brown, everyone who he was able to bring in, and there might be a name or two coming down the pipeline here in the future, so they might not even be done with that. This is going to put USC in a position to do a better job of evaluating talent and getting the best players on the team. So I don't think you can possibly look at it in a negative way. To me, it's a big step forward.
Yeah, I think it's very positive. It's funny. The Helium Boys were talking about the regime change, when Lincoln Riley came in and some of the people that he brought with them. It's really the only one that's kind of left in the same role is Dennis Simmons at the receivers coach. Everyone else has sort of been cycled out or took a lesser role in the program. And I think you get a lot more, a lot of different voices, which is good. And, a lot of it being everything is sort of the whole landscape of college football has changed since all those people were doing their jobs in Oklahoma. So getting a guy like Chad Bowden come in and who's been an experienced GM in this new era, that's good. There's a lot of good stuff, I think, happening. And it's some different voices around Lincoln Riley going into this season.
Certainly. And I just don't know, how can they not have a top 10 class next season? And it should probably be better. That 2026 class, like we said last week, that'll be the first time to really evaluate that new personnel staff. The amount of resources they're throwing at it and the fact that USC does have some money to spend, there's no excuse anymore, which I like that part of it too. In the past, they were a little slow to evolve. They maybe were afraid of some previous NCAA violations that have hurt them, and maybe that was why they weren't able to get into the pay-for-play game as quickly as fans would have liked. So I understand the excuses. What's nice now is if in 2026, 2027, those two high school classes aren't elite, then that'll be a big problem, because it looks like they're taking steps to address that, to get the best high school players they possibly can, and now they just got to go do it. Yeah,
we had a comment in the chat from Roger. With new admin additions, I think USC's NIL should be bigger. The money hasn't been the problem. It's how it was spent. I think the correct statement here, in my opinion, Roger, would be with the new admin additions, they will utilize the resources at their disposal much better. So the USC spent a lot more money in NIL than Notre Dame did. Notre Dame just did a much better job of being efficient with that money. So now a guy like Chad Bowden comes in and has a bigger pool of money to play with to be, to do that GM job. So I think that's the more important aspect.
I totally agree with you, and hopefully now we do see that money be spent better, because I say it every show. We talk about it all the time, Ryan. Last week we talked about it too. USC, we know that they have a NIL budget that isn't at the top of the sport, but it's probably in that second tier. And did they have a roster last season that looked like a second tier roster? And no, they went 6-6, and yes, they competed in a lot of games, but on the flip side, they lost some games that they shouldn't have lost. The talent acquisition and getting guys to stay, that whole piece hasn't been what you would expect from a USC, and now they've taken steps to address that.
All right, well, let's get to what the topic was for the day. So props to Connor for coming up with this, because there wasn't a whole lot going on, obviously, but we'll try to come up. If you have ideas for topics for a show, like a whole show, we can talk about a certain topic, you can email us podcast@uscfootball.com. We'll do a little prep work and get into it and be able to chat about it. But what we wanted to do was talk about three things. Remember my 3 keys to victory for the games? We're not doing that, but three aspects that we're really excited about for this USC football program in 2025. And then on the other side, 3 things that concern us. So maybe we'll do one by one. I'll do one, an excited, and then have you do an excited. And maybe I'll do a concern and you do a concern. You want to do that and go back and forth?
Works for me.
Okay, we can do that. So we might have overlap. I am not sure. I'm guessing the first one there might be some overlap on, just because it's fresh in our minds. But at least my first one, there might be some overlap. But I'll give mine. We'll give some thoughts, get Connor's thoughts on it, and then I'll pitch it to Connor, and he can have and give his thoughts on, and give his, and we can chat about that as well. So my first one, very excited about, of course, new linebackers coach Rob Ryan, and really specifically the marriage with Eric Gentry. I know someone posted on the P today, an Instagram post from Eric Gentry, and he looked like, I don't know, way bigger than he was before. I don't know if that was even real. I just glanced through it, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But just hearing Rob Ryan talk about, and he was talking about, coaching the Honey Badger, someone that has a jack of all trades, can play different positions, and to be mentioning an Eric Gentry like that because of his length, because of his athletic ability, what he's able to do, an experienced NFL coach like that, I think can coach him up and put him in good positions. I think Matt Entz did a nice job with that last year, and I think you're going to get some of the similar stuff with Rob Ryan. Eric Gentry looked like a new person when he got a new linebacker coach that was utilizing him correctly, and I think if he got a dud linebacker coach this time, it would probably go back and, it wouldn't be the same. But it looks like you got another really good linebacker coach that's going to be able to utilize Eric Gentry and all that length and everything that he can bring to the football field and try him in different spots. So I'm really excited about that marriage between those two and what the potential is. Because the linebacker spot, just the whole position group has been underperforming for years around USC. And I felt like last year with Matt Entz, you finally got some good production. I think you're going to see that same one. But just seeing Rob Ryan and Eric Gentry together, that's what I'm excited about.
What a fascinating history Eric Gentry's had in terms of his linebacker coaches. Yeah. I mean, going back to being with Antonio Pierce and Herm Edwards at Arizona State, and then starts with Brian Odom at USC, but then Matt Entz, and then Rob Ryan now. What an eclectic mix of coaches that he's dealt with, and I know he's still tight with Antonio Pierce. Chris has talked about that a lot. So I like that marriage a lot too, Ryan. That did not make my list, so that's a good starting point. We won't have some overlap on the first one. I like that a lot too, because I like Rob Ryan. It's one of those things where if it doesn't work him here at USC, it's going to be something that we just didn't expect, because on paper, like, the guy has it all, the track record, the relationship piece. He's such a people person, and he might talk too much. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't know how this doesn't work, and how Eric Gentry doesn't have a big year if he's able to stay healthy with Rob Ryan calling the shots. I mean, this guy was the Patriots linebacker coach when they won their first 2 Super Bowls. He's been a defensive coordinator, I think, at 4 different NFL teams. Like, it's impossible to know more about defense and know more about playing linebacker. And just the experience that Rob Ryan has, it's impossible to have more than that, really. So, yeah, I like that a lot, too. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work, it's going to be for something we didn't expect. Because kind of like what we see with the personnel staff, like they're making moves that you think, okay, they should be better. So, again, now we just got to see it happen.
A lot of comments in the chat. Roger, I put it up earlier. If you're watching on YouTube, Rob Ryan likes tall linebackers. And a lot of talk about he needs to stay healthy. And, yeah, that would be great if he could stay healthy. But when he's out there, he made a difference for the defense for sure. He
likes short linebackers too. Mayava's cousin, Kaluks
Mayava. That was so good.
What did he call him? A runt or something? Or is that a different guy?
No,
that was him. I think.
Yeah, I think it was him. Like the story Rob Ryan shared is that he forgot to book a rental car for him and his wife in Maui, and Kaluka Mayava had told him, he didn't believe in him, and then he saw how good he was. He wasn't drafted and all that stuff, and he just said to tell Kaluk sent you, and he did, and he instantly got a rental car. So Kaluka Mayava had some pull in Maui, at least.
I'll go to my first positive now. So when I look at the whole roster, I think this group is going to be the best part of USC's roster going into next fall, and that's the running backs. It's a totally different room with Woody Marks going to the NFL, Quentin Joyner transferring to Texas Tech. Brian Jackson is back. He had a nice bowl game for USC. He'll be in the mix. And then you add Hutchinson Community College JUCO transfer Wayman Jordan to the mix. You add Eli Sanders, who was a Iowa State signee out of high school, spent, I think, either the last couple of years or just the last year at New Mexico. He was a 1,000-yard rusher with them. That group, that trio should have a lot of success for USC. I know Gerard loves Wayman Jordan.
He does.
Eli Sanders, anytime you can bring in a guy with his track record, yes, it was at the FCS level, and yes, Wayman Jordan, it's been at a lower level, but those guys have had so much success at what they do. When you talk to Wayman Jordan's high school coach down in Florida where Wayman grew up, I forget the guy's name, but he's talked about how he's worked with NFL players in the past, and Wayman Jordan is on the short list of the best running backs he's ever worked with. He thinks it's going to be a home run, that marriage, USC and Wayman Jordan. Gerard, I know, really likes it, like I said. Eli Sanders is a different sort of piece to that mix. Like I like the fact that there are 3 guys who I feel pretty good about, and we know that USC won't use all 3 unless there is an injury, but I like the depth there. I think it's going to be a really good room, and what I really hope to see, Ryan, is Lincoln Riley run the ball more, and that's something that we've talked all about last season. But how is this team built? Like, it's built like a Big Ten team, I think, where you're big in the trenches, especially on defense. You have running backs who are talented. I have some questions about the offensive line. I have some questions about the quarterback. I like the 2 top receivers USC brings back, but this should be a team that runs the ball more than they pass, I think, and that's just different than what Lincoln Riley's done. Like, there's no Kyler Murray, there's no Caleb Williams, there's no CeeDee Lamb, I don't think, even though I like Jacoby Lane. There's no Mark Andrews at tight end. What you have is a really good group of running backs in a league where a really good group of running backs makes a big difference. It's hard to have this air raid style in the Big Ten if you don't have the personnel for it, and I feel like for the second year in a row, USC doesn't have that classic Lincoln Riley personnel. So if he can adapt, and if he can call more running plays and make that the biggest emphasis on the offense, I think this group has a chance to set the tone and win a lot of games for USC if they are given the opportunity.
I'm wondering if you're giving a preview to one of your concerns there. That was like, it
I think so.
Mine, mine followed, like my first, excitement point is followed by a concern in the same group. You can probably guess what it is, but I was curious about that. But yeah, you're right. I think you like the group. Lincoln Riley's had really good success bringing in running backs every single year. And I think the biggest concern is they haven't used them as much as they probably could have. I mean, did you sort of not utilize enough a guy like Woody Marks or Travis Dye? There was a lot of issues there where it just seems like you're going to throw the ball, but you got these running backs that are doing a really nice job. And year in and year out, they've had really good production from these running backs. So, yeah, no, I would agree with you there. It's a really exciting group to watch. Will they get the ball enough? I don't know. I did talk to Gerard about that because he does love Jordan. But he had the same concern. He's like, but I don't know if they're going to call enough plays for him, so we'll see.
The one thing with Wayman Jordan, I thought he was a little bigger. He's only 5'11", 205 pounds. His film, he looks like a bowling ball, and he runs over guys. I wanted to compare him to Ramondre Stevenson, but Stevenson was like 245 pounds coming out of Oklahoma when he was with Lincoln Riley, and Jordan's a little smaller. So they have a similar running style, but in terms of like the bulkiness, Jordan is a little quicker and more elusive and just a little smaller. So we'll see how he holds up in the Big Ten.
We'll see. So leading into my first concern is with that same linebacker group, just the overall depth, right? I mean, you feel really good about your top guy. And then after that, there's options, but there's not a lot. And we both felt that in the winter portal, USC needed to bring in an experienced linebacker. You saw like a Mason Cobb coming in or Mascarenas Arnold. They brought in guys to fill that role before, and this was another year where you needed somebody, if not two, to come in, and you got none. And I think that's a concern there. You feel good about the guy coaching them up, and they're probably going to get somebody in the spring window, I would assume. But I think that's for me one of the big concerns is just the overall lack of linebacker depth. And we saw Anthony Beavers, right, move over when Eric Gentry got hurt. So that could add a little bit more depth. They pick up Tuatele, whatever, in the late signing period or late signing day. But yeah, I think overall you just would like another experienced body out there in your linebacker core.
Totally agree. That's number 2 on my concern list. So I'll just start there.
Okay.
I would feel so great if like Eric Gentry wasn't a health risk. Like that's probably the biggest concern to me is you have this guy who, let's be honest, he was at an All-American pace the first 3 or 4 games, however many it was before he got hurt against Michigan. He was exceptional in a game with Mason Graham, who's going to be a first round, maybe a top 5 pick. Eric Gentry was rivaling Mason Graham on the other side. What he was doing, it was incredible. So I really like Eric Gentry. How can you not like Eric Gentry? But the track record with his health is very concerning. And then you couple that with the returning linebackers that USC has, I think it has to be a concern. Where Desmond Stevens, when he played, for the most part, I thought looked pretty good. Had a great interception against Penn State. He has that bigger body, even for being a second-year guy next season. Like I do think he can slide into a bigger role and play well. One thing that concerned me, Ryan, was I thought Elijah Newby was going to be a guy who we could rely on next season. And then in the bowl game, they have him playing edge rusher. And I think he was a backup piece there in case someone got hurt. They could have thrown him out at edge rusher because they were concerned about their edge rusher depth, which is fine. But I would have loved for him to have gone through practices leading up to the bowl game as linebacker, play him as a linebacker, get him out onto the field. I don't think he had a single defensive snap in the bowl game. He redshirted last year, so he didn't play at all at the tail end of the season after playing on special teams. He played in special teams in the bowl game. But the fact that he wasn't a linebacker in the Las Vegas Bowl was a little disappointing to me. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to take this big jump and potentially contribute next season. I just thought that was a missed opportunity for him there. So, yeah, your best player is fantastic, but he's injury-prone. Behind him, there's not a lot of depth. I think they have to take someone from the spring window, like you talked about, someone similar to a Greedy Vance, who different position, but someone similar to a Gavin Meyer, who you'll just throw in and they'll have a big role, because if they don't do anything at that spot, they're just way too limited. Eric Gentry gets hurt, you're relying on guys who just haven't played enough.
Yeah, I mean, like Mason Cobb 1 year, Mascarenas Arnold the next year.
Maybe you can get someone better than those guys. I had very high hopes for Cobb when he came in, and for whatever reason, that first year he missed so many tackles, and last season he was solid to
he was okay,
but in Mascarenas Arnold, I think he's just limited because of his size. So really smart player, and he did have some moments where he popped, but I'm hoping that they can make an upgrade here in the spring portal.
Yeah, I mean, either of those guys I think would help. Like,
for sure.
Yeah, but like you would like someone that's like actual,
ideally, yeah,
like a stud. But a starting caliber linebacker you would like to have in there if it's one of those guys or somebody better. I think USC needs to go there. All right, go back to what we're excited about. I'm going to go with one of the biggest recruits at a position of need, Jakeem Stewart. What is this defensive line going to look like? I think the exciting part is this was a guy that could have gone to Oregon, and he ends up at USC. We haven't seen a lot of those in the recruiting battles, and it's a big position of need. And I think with the nickname like Thanos and all that, I mean, I think there could be a lot of fun with this if he comes in and isn't a bust, isn't one of the, we've seen these happen before with USC, but like a big body, athletic, someone that everybody wanted, someone that USC had to pay probably out the nose for, get him on campus, get him in there, and have him wreak havoc and make plays. I think he's just someone you're like, okay, we need to bring someone like that. This isn't Nate Clifton or Gavin Meyer coming in. This is eyes wide open, 5-star kind of guy. So I think that's something I'm excited for.
I'm excited about him too. I just don't know how he can possibly live up to expectations in his first year.
Good point. Yeah.
If he comes out and has double-digit sacks, I will happily eat crow on that and happily admit I was wrong. But it's a guy who reclassified. It's a guy who only played 12 high school games in his career. I know he has a great trainer and he works so hard with his trainer, and it's like an NFL model, and Eric Henderson believes in him. Danton Lynn believes in him. I do think he'll have a chance to play and maybe even play a lot, especially on the edge if USC doesn't get another edge rusher. So he'll have an opportunity. But it's just hard to come in right away at that position as a first-year player and have a big impact. Like we saw Bear Alexander at Georgia get a sack in the national title game, but even he didn't play a whole lot at Georgia that first year. Examples of guys coming in and playing a lot that first year are tough to come by. Mason Graham did play a good amount at Michigan, so it's not impossible. But Mason Graham was a guy at Servite who, from sophomore to senior year, played, I think, just about every varsity game and has just a lot more playing experience than Stewart. I love the mythological Thanos, like a guy from Louisiana, that body. You don't get a lot of body types like him. Like there's a chance for him to be like a legend when he leaves, which is really cool. It's just hard to have those expectations and when you've reclassified and only play the 12 games. So again, I hope I'm wrong on that, but I think we do need to temper the expectations a little bit. He's a guy who has the chance to be really good. I just don't know how good he'll be in year one.
All right. They're calling you a buzzkill in the
I'm sure.
That's okay. That's all right.
Not the first time.
Full speed ahead. Thanos time. That's we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I agree with your I'm excited just because you haven't seen someone that could have gone to Oregon end up at USC when money was involved. So that was a good sign, just getting him on campus.
And USC paid the money it took to get it done. Remember when Stewart visited Oregon, immediately his camp was like, yeah, we're not going there. I don't think Oregon had an offer that was competitive, and not for lack of being able to pay it. I just don't think they valued him the same way USC did. So it's a fascinating who was right situation. If he goes on and has this amazing career, USC ends up being right. Credit to USC's evaluators. If Oregon was right to not offer him that amount of money and he doesn't perform well, then they'll be right for that. So that's a fascinating thing that'll play out in real time. My second positive, the year 2 of Danton Lynn. Retaining the defensive coordinator for USC was huge. Penn State made a run at him, as we've talked about a ton on the show. And let's not forget, Ryan, he's only in his 3rd year of calling a defense. So I think there's going to be some personal growth from him. This is the first time in his career he's spent 2 years as a defensive play caller in the same spot. He was at UCLA, did such a good job there. Then he goes over to USC. Now he's in his 2nd year with a lot of players who were here a year ago. So I think there will be some growth there. He'll have a better idea of what he's working with. There's so much to like with him coming back. The linebacker with Eric Gentry we like, and we'll see what they do to fill that role. The secondary, they have some guys we like. The defensive line has totally been retooled with Keyshawn Silver, Ja Jarrett. If he has a big freshman season, Jakeem Storr will be in the mix. I like the edge rushers that they have coming back. On paper, they need to do a little bit better production-wise. So there's some talent there for Danton Lynn, and I do think the fact that he's in his 2nd year at the same spot with a group of players he'll know really well and have this whole offseason to game plan after transitioning the previous 2 years to UCLA and then USC will be significant. I have high hopes for USC's defense next season. I don't know if they have like a game breaker like a Liatu Latu or someone who is just going to totally dominate things. But I think they have enough talent to be really good in the Big Ten, and Lynn coming back is a huge part of that.
Yeah, no, it's something to be excited for, just because he could have gone to Penn State with his alma mater. USC had to step up to pay him to. They recruited the hell out of him, just like James Franklin did. I mean, James Franklin made a in-home visit to try to bring D'Anton Lynn, and then went out and spent over $3 million to get the national championship winning defensive coordinator. So it's exciting that he's still on campus, probably kept a lot of the things on that defense together, and with some more talent, with a Thanos on the defensive line, maybe, see some improvement. Because we saw improvement in a lot of aspects, but there were some that weren't as good as far as, the fourth downs were bad. There were some the defensive stats, I forget off the top of my head. Some of the other ones were pretty bad, like in general. Good third down, bad fourth down. And I think tackles for loss were bad. They didn't get a lot of tackles for loss.
No sacks, pretty much. No tackles for loss.
So
last year just shows how great of a coach Lynn was, where Eric Gentry gets hurt, Anthony Lucas gets hurt, Kamari Ramsey was in and out of the lineup at the end of the year. He was just piecing stuff together at the end, and they didn't win as many games as you would have liked. But, not to compare him to Alex Grinch, but a worse defensive coordinator doesn't get nearly the amount of production that USC did. Look, could they have gotten off the field against Penn State? Yes, but Jamil Muhammad had a chance to sack Drew Aller, and he just couldn't make the play. He was put in a position to make a play, and he just didn't make it. So you can only blame the coach so much. Now they should have better talent, and I think we'll see with Lynn play calling for another year and more talent in the system that they should be better.
All right. One of my concerns, and I think I never would have thought that I would be saying this about a Lincoln Riley team, considering he's had Heisman trophies and 3 number 1 overall picks at the quarterback spot, but it's quarterback play. What is going to happen? USC, you assume with Riley, you're going to get great quarterback play. You had the generational talent in Caleb Williams, and Miller Moss, who not a lot of people were high on. Then he looks good too, at least at the end of last year, and then some spots during the season before he gets replaced by Jaden Maiava. And there's some really good things we've seen from Maiava, and then some not so good things too. But you got a whole season. You have Maiava for sure. He's around, but they got the freshman coming in who's on Longstreet. What is he going to be kind of a factor in all this? I don't know. But I think just overall quarterback play is concerning, because I just don't know if Lincoln Riley can coach an elite team that's really good on defense and runs the ball a lot. That just hasn't been his MO. That just hasn't been a way that they've showed that they can be successful, running a team. I think Longstreet, there's some really cool aspects about his game. He was a co-MVP at the Polynesian Bowl, but I'm not sure if he's ready to take the plunge there yet. So I think just overall quarterback play for me, Connor, is a concern. And that's the one thing that you usually think with Lincoln Riley, okay, don't got to worry about that. Let's worry about the other stuff. The other stuff you feel pretty good about. The quarterback play, not as much.
So Maiava's play doesn't make my list, but I totally get why it would make yours, and it probably should make mine. He's never played a game on the road. I don't count the Las Vegas Bowl. I don't count at UCLA. And that, I think, is probably the most concerning thing. We've never seen him in a hostile road environment. And coming up next season, USC goes to Notre Dame, USC goes to Nebraska, USC goes to Illinois, who isn't a traditional really good team, but they're getting some college football playoff buzz. That place is going to be loud. The road games next season, Purdue should be easy, but there are some challenging road games, and I forgot Oregon too, and we just haven't seen him on the road. Part of me thinks he's going to have a good offseason and take some strides and be pretty good, but I'm a little nervous because we've heard some murmurs if Riley and company aren't totally sold on him after the spring, maybe they'd go look at another quarterback. I don't think it's 1,000% that he's the guy next season. I think he still needs to go out and earn the job in the spring. But he's such a high variance player where I do think there's a real shot of him having a really good spring, his second in the Lincoln Riley system, and winning the job and making the coaching staff confident that he's the right guy to lead the charge for them. Because for as ugly as some of his moments were last season, he did go 3-1 in his starts, and he did look pretty good. Like the highs were high, and I mean the lows were low too. But like if you can just coach some of the turnover mistakes out of him, I think his ceiling is pretty high. So that's my take on February 11th. But like if they turn around in April and say someone from the SEC jumps into the portal and Riley targets that player and USC has a new quarterback for 2025, like I wouldn't be surprised at that. I would be a little annoyed, though, if I was a USC fan, because then it's like, well, why don't you just do this earlier? This player would have missed out on all of spring. What I'm trying to say is, like, I think it could still go both ways. And I'm high on him more so than I think most people are, because I do think his upside is really great. But, like, we saw the turnovers with him were just a huge problem. So if he can get those mistakes out of his game and have a huge spring and get the confidence of the staff, I don't think he's a concern, but I totally get why he would be a concern, because he's coming into next season, and I don't think it's a total 1,000% lock he's the starter.
Yeah, Anthony in the chat says Mav at this point is what he is, high variance with a big arm and can use his legs. I would like to see the legs being used more. Like, I think that's one of his gifts, and it's almost like you tried to avoid it. So I think you could help his game by using the legs more.
And I do think another year with Lincoln Riley could make a big difference. I know he spent 2 years at UNLV. The second year he was the starter, and then last year at USC. So he's not as young as some people think he is. He has a lot of experience. But I do still think he's a guy, like, you kind of want the guy who keeps getting better. Like, look at Malachi Nelson, who 5-star guy, and now he's at UTEP. A guy just never got better. And I think Mayava is going to continue to get better, which is significant. And I really think he has the chance to be a special player, but like the variance with him, it totally exists. And the commenter might be right. I disagree with that. I don't think he is what he is at this point. I think to be the starter at USC, you have to be better than he was last season, although they were 3-1 in his start. So I don't want to totally discredit that. But like the lows can't be as low as they were. He understands that. Lincoln Riley understands that. They're going to work together to try to get him to improve, and I think he has the chance to improve.
All right. You have a concern?
Yes. Okay, so my biggest concern is the offensive line. I do not trust that offensive line on paper. I hope that they can figure it out, but I like Elijah Page at left tackle. DJ Wingfield, if he ends up being the left guard, the Purdue transfer, he was so-so at Purdue. He has a big body, and he's a guy who had a lot of success at right tackle at the FCS level, but when he played guard at Purdue last season, he was up and down. I like the Syracuse center, but moving over from the ACC to the Big Ten, I think is a big step, and we'll see how he adjusts. Is he going to be better than Jonah Monheim? I have a hard time seeing that. I like Alani Noah at right guard, and then at right tackle, it's a guy who either they're going to add someone in the spring window or it'll be Tobias Raymond most likely. So he's going to be an inexperienced starter. Looking at it from 30,000 feet, Ryan, would you say that in year 4 of Lincoln Riley, like this offensive line is good enough? Like, I just don't think on paper these guys are as talented as you would hope them to be. Like, Elijah Page is the only blue chip recruit on this list. And it's like, this is USC. Like, how can you not have better talent? So it could come together and they could defy my expectations and be pretty good. But I'm very concerned about that group because it's a lot of new pieces. It's older guys which should be good, but there just isn't a lot of, like, the ceiling for the group I don't think is all that high, and it's a concern for me.
I think the ceiling comment is right on there. Like, it could be effective, but is this going to be a super high functioning offensive line? I don't know. You also have a new offensive line coach in Zach Hansen. Josh Henson, there was concerns and stuff there, but they got better. Like, they looked bad in the beginning of last year, and with the same group of dudes and moving a little bit, like, he got better. I mean, you could argue he got a lot out of some of those guys. So you could have concerns on the coaching side, certainly on the personnel side. I think that's a real deal, especially if you like the running backs as much as you do. It's really tough for a running back to be successful if you don't have a great offensive line or something, at least a pretty good one. Because when you look at running back stats and they do well when they're not touched for the first 2 or 3 yards. When they're touching the backfield, some of them are still good enough to kind of get 4 or 5 yards out of it. But if you're not getting touched till the 3rd yard, then that's a 7 or 8 yard run, and with the same running back. So I think you're going to need that success. And if you're questioning the quarterbacks, like we talked about with my last one, obviously you want to protect them. So I totally agree. I think that's a potential big concern for USC.
The good news is the first 4 games of the schedule allow that group to come together, and you really shouldn't be challenged too much. The couple FCS teams and then Purdue and Michigan State, I think it is off the top of my head, those are all winnable games, and on paper that will allow you to figure out your offensive line. The last thing I'll say on it, so they have to replace 3 starters, Jonah Monheim at center, left guard Emmanuel Pregnon, and then right tackle Mason Murphy. Have they upgraded any of those spots? And I think you could make a case that they haven't, with DJ Wingfield potentially playing left guard. If he plays right tackle, he's probably an upgrade over Mason Murphy, but right now I think he's the left guard. Is he better than Emmanuel Pregnon? Might be close, but I don't think so. Is John Ray Reed, Big General Reed, better than Jonah Monheim? Solid player, but I don't think he's better than Jonah Monheim. And then Tobias Raymond, is he better than Mason Murphy? You hope so, but you just can't say for sure that he is.
All right, my last, what I'm excited for, and this isn't necessarily an on-the-field thing, but it will lead to that, is just USC redoing their efforts, for local high school recruiting. They just sort of looked at it as it's not really that important, or we don't think it's going to bear fruit. This isn't going to help our program. And I think that was the complete wrong take. And now it seems to have shifted 180 degrees. Some of the recruiters that they've brought in that have, just a Chad Savage, that was those last 2 stops have been Southern California was his beat, right? That was where he was making his bones, and he's going to recruit it hard. And even Chad Bowman knows, like, we're going to major in high school recruiting, we're going to minor in the portal. They are not going to ignore Southern California. There's times you just need to bring in that, like, borderline 4-star guy that grew up a USC fan, that plays locally, that will be loyal and want to stick around. And you want those guys in your program. And I feel like we've seen Riley and the coaches sort of ignore some of those guys. And some of them have gone on and been complete super studs for national championship type of programs, and not being a big presence at Mater Dei or St. John Bosco or Corona Centennial and all that. You need to do that. So I'm excited that we're not going to have to see all these local dudes that are like, wow, that guy's good, and he only went to Oregon or Alabama or Ohio State or Texas or whatever. I think now you're not going to get all of them like the Pete Carroll days, but you're going to get more than you were getting before. You're going to, and for our fans that are on the Peristyle, Connor, like, that's what when they've grown up, like, with USC football as part of USCfootball.com from the 1996 when I started it. If you've been a fan for that long, or in that, like, that's where you get the most excited about, is getting that local highly ranked kid. To, like, ignore that for the last couple years it's like heartbreaking for them. The whole sport's changing and it's hurting the fans, but USC not recruiting locally hard, it was really hurting the fans. So I'm excited for them. They're going to be more excited that USC's in on these guys. So that's something I'm really excited for.
What you said about the culture makes a lot of sense, where if you recruit a kid from out of state and it doesn't go very well the first or second year, it's so easy for them just to hop in the portal. Where if you recruit a local kid, those kids are going to stick around for the most part. We've seen guys like Miller Moss stick around, Rajon Davis stick around, Corey Foreman stick around. And yeah, they didn't end up having the greatest careers at USC, of course, but I do think there's something to staying around, like being like Anthony Beavers, where you're not probably going to go to the NFL, but you're a solid piece on a defense that has the chance to be pretty good. If he's not from Southern California, is he in the portal right now? Is he on some other team? I think the logical conclusion would be that he would be, because he'd be looking for a bigger role. What made Notre Dame so successful was that a lot of their guys didn't leave, and all the names I brought up so far haven't really been huge impact players, but what I'm trying to say is if you recruit locally, you're just not going to have as many guys leave year in and year out. And I think that's important. Of course, you need to get the best possible players. And if players aren't as good, they should leave. Building up Southern California as a base, though, will allow you to not have as many comings and goings, I think. And I actually think that's significant because you need guys who can take maybe 3 or 4 years to develop, but then you can rely on those guys later on. And in the current climate of college football, if you're not playing in your first 2 years, you're out of there. If you recruit locally, that will at least help you build something where you don't have to totally overhaul your roster every year. Does that make sense? Do you get what I'm saying?
No, 100%. Like a Miller Moss, like he would have transferred, 10 times before he did if he wasn't from Southern California.
And then some people are like, "Oh, good, that would have helped us out."
He did some really good things for USC, but you wouldn't have had that option if he wasn't local. Like he stuck around because he's a local guy and he was loyal and all that. And you need some of those guys.
Mm-hmm. That's my point too. And I mean, it would have been great if USC had Bryce Young. So let's talk about the other side of the coin where they've just missed out on some of the elite. Mason Graham's kind of a bad example because he blew up late in the process, and Michigan just did a good job of recruiting him. He wasn't that prototypical,
right.
Oh, you can't miss him, but he ended up being a kid who you couldn't miss, and maybe if USC prioritized Southern California a little bit. Okay, that actually – Lincoln Riley, I think, did do an in-home visit with him, and he was the class right when Riley was hired, so I think that's actually a bad example. But let's just make it for the sake of making it. If you get Mason Graham, a local kid, then you have a top 10 defensive lineman who will be picked this year. So, again, that's not – I think USC did try with him. He's a poor example. The point is there have been too many guys going out of state who are right in your backyard. Like Alabama signed more top 15 guys in 2025 from Southern California than USC did. Unacceptable.
That's not acceptable. Yeah, get rid of all that. So I'm excited for this new philosophy for local recruiting. What's your last exciting point for
How
this
about
team?
Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane? Outside of what Ohio State has coming back, are there any better receiving duos in the conference? I'd have to look, but off the top of my head, I feel like Lemon and Lane they're not 2, they're 3 or 4 at worst. So that's exciting. I think Mekhi Lemon last season established himself as the go-to guy for whoever the quarterback was when he was available, and that played itself out with the stats. He had 764 receiving yards, which led USC 3 touchdowns. And then Lane, if he can get his receiving yards up, he had the 2 huge games, one against Wisconsin, one against A&M, where he was over 100 yards, 12 touchdowns. He was an awesome red zone threat. I like that 1-2 punch for USC. Both guys are coming into their third years. Both guys were players recruited out of high school to USC. I really think they have a chance to have a special year. If the offensive line can protect and Jaden Maiava has time to get those guys the ball, they could be a really special duo.
I couldn't agree more there. I mean, as far as like what's a strength of the team, you got to mention those 2 guys. Like if you're concerned about the quarterback play, you're concerned about the offensive line. When we were talking about that, people were in the chat talking about it's going to be okay. You got Jacoby Lane, you got Mekhi Lemon. And the fact that Lemon sort of emerged from that group of, talented freshmen as just someone that you're like, he's a go-to guy. I think he's going to be a leader on this team. And, you lost some bodies there. You might not see as big of a rotation. I think those 2 guys are going to be a massive. People asked us last year, is this guy or this guy going to have a 1,000-yard season? And we were like, no, because they're going to spread the ball around. There's too many dudes. Now there's not. And I think either one of those 2 or both, if you have a really good year, has the potential to have a 1,000-yard season. You're going to see those guys be like the number 1 option in a lot of games, as opposed to previous year. It was sort of like, oh, it's Lake McCree this week, or it's you had a different guy almost every week be the number 1 option. I think every week it's probably going to be one of those 2 guys.
And then how about Mekhi Lemon now, hopefully returning kicks and punts?
Yeah.
That might make some people nervous because that does come with an injury risk, and if you lose him on special teams, that would really hurt. But I think his boom potential is so much where you have to use him as the punt returner and kick returner because he can make an explosive play every time he touches the ball. We saw that last season, especially with his kick returns. I like Zachariah Branch, really nice kid. I'm excited that Mekhi Lemon will be returning punts next season because Zachariah Branch, for whatever reason, Ryan, it just didn't happen with him this year as a punt returner. So that's another thing to be excited about with those two.
Yeah, that was a weird one. We watched all those returns live, and you could just see it just
pressing. Yeah,
it just wasn't working. And if he should have caught it, he didn't. And if he shouldn't have caught it, he did. And he should have returned it. He fair caught it. It wasn't, something wasn't right. And so you wish him the best. I mean, he's a great kid. So hopefully that goes well. All right, we only have one concern each left. I know you probably want to do more because that's just, everyone's saying that you're I'm just kidding.
That's
okay. Connor lobbied for, can I do 10 concerns?
No, 3 and 3.
I'm just kidding. 3 and 3. Here's my, there's 4 parts to this concern.
Oh, wow.
Purdue, Illinois, Nebraska, and Oregon. What are those? Those are USC's Big Ten road games. USC was awful on the road this last year. You want to count the UCLA win as a Big Ten road win? I'm not gonna. They lost to freaking Maryland.
Only league win.
The only league win Maryland had was USC at home, and USC was up 13 or 14. What was it, 14? A couple of minutes left in the game or whatever, and Maryland scores 15 points and wins that game. So yes, is Purdue a steaming pile of doo-doo? Sure, but so was Maryland, and USC lost. So all of those games, USC needs to win a game in another time zone, which they haven't done in a long time, right? Like they've not been able to go towards the Midwest or East Coast and win a game. It's been a long time for Notre Dame. They did the whole season last year and didn't win any of those outside of the Rose Bowl, something still in Los Angeles. So figure out a way to get stuff right on the road. It's nice that you can, I think Purdue's the first one, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. It's nice to do that one to get it out of the way. But if you don't win that one, I mean, Illinois is really, they were 9 and 3. I mean, they weren't talked about as a playoff team, but they, I think they had just as much pull as a South Carolina or Ole Miss. I mean, they were in the same record. I think they lost to Oregon, Ohio State. Their 2 losses were to 2 big playoff teams, 2 of their losses. So Nebraska. Now UCLA went to Nebraska and won last year, but Nebraska's good. They can beat you. USC could have turned the ball over a bunch more in the Coliseum last year and probably lost to Nebraska, but they played well. And outside of that, and then trying to get a win at Oregon. So I think it gets a little tougher as you go, but get that Purdue win. At least start with that.
They better beat freaking Purdue.
Holy cow, if that doesn't happen. But yes, so those are my concerns. A Big Ten road slate that's not insurmountable, but man, you got to get at least 2 wins on the road in the Big Ten. If not, it's like, oh my God, that's terrible. Because you still have Notre Dame on the road also. I'm not even counting that because it's not a Big Ten game, but play well. Get some wins on the road because it was awful last year.
The middle of that schedule will be so fun to just see how USC does at Illinois, home Michigan, at Notre Dame, bye week, at Nebraska. That determines the rest of how things go, I think, because you probably beat Northwestern, and then you have Iowa, Oregon, UCLA. So at the end of the schedule is hard too, but that middle portion, that will be where we'll see just how well the team is going to do, because I do think that they should go out to a 4-0 start. Anything worse than that will be unacceptable. You can't drop one of those games. So
no. Jeff said over a decade. So I think it's been over a decade since they won a 2-time zone game or something. I forget what the stat is, but it's been a long time. It's been bad. Is it Molly May? Maryland comments getting old. We get it. We lost to Maryland. Let's not act like other tops haven't lost to teams they shouldn't. Well, if it was a one-off,
yeah,
it wasn't a one-off. You needed a win, in that one, because you should have beat Minnesota and lost that game. Should have beat Michigan and you lost that game. It's just they seem to keep happening on the road. But Maryland was that Purdue game, So if you're going to say Purdue's easy and just check it off as a win, then look at the Maryland game. It happened. It's real. I was there, tangible. You could taste it. It was off. It was a horrible, horrible loss. So it's not like we're going to ignore it. it's part of the narrative of what happened. So you have to go out and win some of these games on the road. If you can't beat Maryland on the road, who are you going to beat? So start with Purdue and then play well. Like UCLA had up and down season or whatever, but to go into Nebraska and get a win, that was more impressive than anything USC did. You know, I mean, it was nice to get a couple wins against SEC teams in Vegas or whatever, but that's a road environment, and UCLA is not as good as USC, and they went out and beat a team that was better than a bunch of the teams USC lost to. So I'm sorry you don't like bringing it up, but it's a real thing that's happened.
I agree with everything you said there. The LSU win was pretty good, but let's not act like they were some awesome team. You know, they ended up being 8-4 in the regular season. They tied for 5th in the SEC, so it's a nice win, but they were 13 when USC beat them, and then I don't think they ended the season in the top 25. So again, nice win, but not something that we thought we thought this was going to be this awesome win at the beginning of the year, and it just didn't turn out that way.
Yeah. All right. What's your final concern?
Okay, final concern. It's a concern that could turn into a strength.
Okay.
So here we go.
Wow, some positivity.
Who's the standout pass rusher? Because I don't know if they have one coming into the year, but I think we'd both agree, Ryan, Anthony Lucas has a chance to be a standout pass rusher. Cameron Fountain has a chance to be a standout pass rusher. Jakeem Stewart, I think, has a chance to be a standout pass rusher. Again, I don't think it's going to be in that first year, but he could certainly get there by the time he's done at USC. The first 4 edge rushers and the only 4 edge rushers, you could mix and match some guys who might play on the interior, but the 4 edge rushers that USC has going into the spring, Anthony Lucas, Cameron Fountain, Braylon Shelby, Lorenzo Cowan. Some of those guys are young, so this isn't the most fair statistic, but just bear with me. Those 4 guys combined for 4 career sacks. They just don't have someone who's proven that they can rush the passer consistently and get sacks. Anthony Lucas did a nice job with pressures last season when he was healthy, but he doesn't have a sack in his career. I think Cameron Fountain probably has the highest ceiling in this group, and if anyone, if I feel the most confident about anyone, it might be him. So I think he could have a big year 2 jump. For them to be good and for them to have success in the middle of that schedule, especially on the road, they need to be able to get to the quarterback, and they don't have an established pass rusher. They have guys who could step into that role, but that's a concern, I think, coming into the season just because they don't have someone with a proven track record there.
No, yeah, I agree there. You got to get production from the edge, just, the defensive line, get after the quarterback. If you watched the Super Bowl, the craziest stat probably was how much pressure Philly got and didn't blitz one time.
That's the way to make elite quarterbacks not look good. You pressure them. I mean, that's Tom Brady would get in trouble when he would be under pressure. Mahomes in the 2 Super Bowls. That's the way to level the playing field, and it's a huge part of the game that USC struggled in this year and the year before. They just haven't had those edge rushers who can really make a difference. And I think Solomon Byrd was drafted in the 7th round last year. He was probably USC's best edge a couple of years ago. They need more guys like Tuli Pelotu, and they haven't gotten really close to that since.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Got to get some production, and I think if Denton Lynn's looking at the assessment of what his season was like, figure out stuff on 4th down. It's nice to be successful on 3rd down. But you want to be able to get them off the field if they go for it on 4th down. That had a lot of that. But I think that the tackles for loss, the sacks, getting that back up there. And I do feel with better personnel, it's going to get better, scheme it up a little bit. So that's certainly a concern. You got to see who's going to be emerging as the guy. Like someone that you would need if you're an opposing offense to circle and go, we have to make sure we take care of this guy. Who is that? I don't know, but they need somebody. Somebody has to be that guy. Otherwise, it's just like, they're all kind of meh. So we'll just block normal and it'll be fine. It's Cameron Fountain. You put him in there. Like, okay, he's the dude. You got to stop him. He's got 6 sacks through 5 games. Whatever. You want someone like that to emerge. So we'll see. I think it's a great concern.
Thank you. Is that it? Because
that's it.
Your road games were the last one? Okay.
We got it. So those are our 3 things each of us are excited about, and 3 things I think we only had one overlap. We had the one linebacker depth, which is pretty.
There we go.
That was good. I like that. We have a bunch of different things. So why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break. We got some questions in the chat and an email, and we'll get you guys out of here. Back in a minute, everyone. righty, we're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham. We got Connor Morrissette. Hope you saw the first part of the episode. We went an hour doing that, so that's a lot. Longer than I thought, but that was great. That's a great topic idea.
Thank you.
If you're in the chat and you want to give some topic ideas for next week, we love it. Email us, podcast@uscfootball.com. We'll get to some of your questions that I start in the chat, and we have one email, and we'll get you guys on your way. Stephen Poway starts us off. He says, now that the 2024 football season is over, the NIL signing day and the winter portal are behind us, it's time to start thinking about spring ball. Who are the 3 players USC has acquired in the past 2 months that you're most interested in watching this spring, and Husan Longstreet doesn't count? Thanks for all of your team, you and your team do to make USC football and USC sports in general interesting and exciting all year round.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah,
Great
thanks, Steve.
question. So I'll just start with Jakeem Stewart because I think there's so much intrigue and interest with him, and I do think it's a big level for him, like a big adjustment for him. But how can you not be excited to just see what he can do on the football field? So I start with him. He's probably the lone high school guy who I'm excited to see outside, or the most excited to see outside of Longstreet, because I don't think either of the offensive linemen will be with that first group. And there's some guys in the secondary I'm looking forward to seeing, but I don't think any of them get really all that close to Jakeem Stewart for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good one. I mean, you had mentioned before about Jordan, the running back, Wayman Jordan, coming in from
He's
Hutchinson.
probably number 2.
Yeah, I think you don't know who's the starter going to be at the running back spot. I think we had a question in the chat about that, but he's someone, I trust Gerard's evaluations of guys. Like, there's so many dudes that he had pointed out, and you're like, oh, and he ends up being like a complete stud. And I'm like, oh, I should have listened to Gerard. Fred Warner, the linebacker with the 49ers or whatever. That's Fred Warner, right? Yeah.
Yep.
He was like Utah guy. I think he ended up going to BYU or something, and he was like pounding the table like USC needs to get on this guy, blah blah blah. And he's like going to be a Hall of Famer now. I think he really loves Jordan. Just says there's a lot of his skills. There's just so much upside there. He really likes him, so I think he's someone you're going to want to watch.
Yeah, I think is number 2 on my list, and then number 3, I think I have to go with Keyshawn Silver, the Kentucky transfer who was a 5-star recruit out of high school, has the very high ceiling, has a chance to be really good for USC. But a guy who is right behind him for me is Bishop Fitzgerald, the safety transfer from NC State. It looks like Kamari Ramsey and Bishop Fitzgerald will be the 2 starting safeties, and I think just watching Bishop Fitzgerald and how he fits into USC's defense will be really fun to do in the spring.
Any thoughts about, since it's a position of need, with Alex Payne, you don't think can be someone that can come in. He was highly ranked, but you don't think he's going to be someone that could come in and probably start early just because it's such a tough thing to do as an offensive lineman.
I guess never say never, but especially in this conference, I have a hard time seeing USC play a true freshman. But if he earns it and has a good spring, he is an early enrollee, so he could have the opportunity if he comes in and really impresses people. But it would surprise me for sure. Yeah.
All right, let's go to some chat questions. Here's the first one. Let's see. Sorry, I got to pull these up. Wayne on YouTube says, will we get a quarterback Lions or quarterback Jonah Williams? Both. You never know if Maeva or Longstreet transfer.
So with Ryder Lyons, as the time goes on here, and he's going to be 2027 because of the reclassification with the Mormon mission. So it's not a technical reclassification, but he'll just not be in the 2026 class, even though he's 2026. It just seems like Oregon has made a big play for him, and I have a feeling unless USC does something different, it's going to be Oregon for him. It seems like they've pivoted, and that's why Jonas Williams is getting more involved with USC. I wouldn't be surprised if those 2 programs end up swapping quarterback commits, where Lyons isn't committed to USC, but there was a feeling a few months ago, his brother's on the team.
Yeah.
He's been to USC a million times. He's USC's to lose. That's fading away, and Jonas Williams isn't probably going to stay in the same class if Oregon picks up Ryder Lyons. So then USC would be in a great position for Jonas Williams. So I would say right now, I do think it's probably going to be Jonas Williams instead of Ryder Lyons, but that's just how I feel on February 11th, and a lot can change between now and December.
Mac has a question. Who do you believe will be the starting corners?
I think DJ Harvey and DeCarlos Nicholson, but I'm 99.9% sure. Maybe that's too high. I'm 95% sure USC is going to bring in another cornerback.
Okay.
They might bring in Jaden Mickey, who was at Notre Dame, was all set to transfer to Cal, but then Cal's defensive backs coach went to TCU, and so USC has gotten involved again with the coaching change, and it sounds like it's between USC and TCU for Jaden Mickey. And if Jaden Mickey comes to USC, I think he would start alongside DJ Harvey, and if they don't get Mickey, maybe they would get someone else. But then behind those two guys, it would be DeCarlos Nicholson and Marcellus Williams, maybe Braylon Conley too. But I think DJ Harvey for sure, and then let's see what moves they make.
Along the same lines, Victor, who's going to be the starting running back in 2025?
I think it's going to be Wayman Jordan, but I don't want to discredit Eli Sanders. If he has a huge camp, I could see him earning the starting job. I don't think Brian Jackson is going to start over those two guys. I don't think you bring in two impact transfers at running back and not have one of them start. So I'd say 70% Wayman Jordan, 30% Eli Sanders. But I think I'm guilty of this on the show. We talk so much about Jordan. Sanders has a chance to start too.
Matthew, Connor, do you cover Graham in high school?
Yes, I did. I covered that great Servite team that lost to Mater Dei in the championship game, but they had made it to the championship, and they were the first non-St. John Bosco team to make it since Corona Centennial made it way back when. So they didn't win that year, Servite, but they got to the championship. Tetroa McMillan was on that team.
Yeah,
he, along with Bryce Young and Mason Graham, I think, are probably the three best high school players I've seen. Mason Graham, he played both ways the whole game against Mater Dei and held up nicely. No one else could block for Servite, but he could block on that offensive line. And oh my goodness, he was amazing. T-Mac had an interception playing both ways. The thing about Servite, they had so much talent, but they just couldn't hold up against Mater Dei that had studs all over the place.
Waves of talent.
Yeah, Servite studs were probably better, but they only had 3 or 4, and they just didn't have the depth. I love Troy Thomas, the guy who was coaching there. He's now coaching at Edison as an assistant. Great guy. Had a really special team with Noah Fafita and those Servite guys. That's a team I'll never forget.
All right. Thanks for that question. That's a good one, Matthew. Roger, so USC got 0 commitments from junior day. That's a disappointment.
Well, they got some last year, and then none of them stuck, right? So I think it's probably a good thing. I saw fans say, "Oh, get ready! We're gonna how many emojis? How many commits?" And I don't think that was the goal of junior day. Of course,
it didn't seem like it.
If someone committed, that would have been great, but that was an opportunity to meet some of the new coaches, meet the new front office staff. For so many guys, that was a reintroduction to USC. A lot of players, they hadn't been recruiting as hard, so I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, that the fact that they didn't get any, because they've had a really hard time holding on to guys. I like that they prioritize getting a lot of local guys to come, and I think that was sort of not an audition, but the first interaction to just this new USC recruiting staff for a lot of these guys, and that's why we didn't see so many commitments. USC's making some changes, and they have a lot of time before signing day, so again, not the end of the world.
Yeah, and I think something the Helium boys pointed out, you're not seeing superfluous emojis coming. That they were
that ended up making them look terrible.
Yeah, I think Shotgun counted 6 of them that never materialized. You're just tweeting out stuff, and it's not even a commitment. So I don't think you're going to see as much of that or anymore. A lot less of that. So with this new staff in the place, personnel staff. Anthony says, Connor, do you go with Mayava with slight improvement, or Husan with a higher ceiling and higher floor?
I just don't think Hassan is a guy who's going to come in and play right away. Look at how bad Dylan Raiola looked against USC last season. Raiola was higher ranked, but similarly ranked, both 5-star guys. It's just so hard to come in that first year and have success. Some guys have done it, but remember, Bryce Young didn't win the job at Alabama his first year, and he was the number 1 pick in the draft. C.J. Stroud sat his first year at Ohio State and then came in and was good. I'm sure I'm missing some marquee example of a freshman coming in and doing well, but I think that's way too risky, and the only way you do that is if there's an injury.
Yeah. Got a few more for you. SoCal weddings. Question. If we don't have the facilities in place, how can we recruit against top 10 teams in the country who have $50 million facilities already established?
The facilities arms race isn't even part of the equation anymore. It's all about who can pay me the most money. So the fact that they have good facilities on the way and a competitive NIL, that's fine. The facilities are not as big of a deal as they used to be.
Yeah, having like your heated locker, butt pad, and an amazing fountain in your like that was all stuff that was the differentiator back in the day because you couldn't pay players. Dude will go to a dank cave if you're paying him enough money. It doesn't have to be the best facilities ever. So the facility, like that's an old way to try to recruit. It's not that it's not important. Like you need stuff. You need to be able to have a good building, and I think USC is doing that, and it's fine. But it's not it's not what's going to sway a lot of guys that are on the fence. It's just not that way anymore. Anthony also wants to know any background for the interim on Carol Folt's retirement. So USC announced an interim president. I forget the name.
Yeon Soo Kim, I think.
Yeah, maybe that's it. General counsel. No offense to the lawyers out there, but I don't like as far as if you were talking about someone being you need to be very progressive, and I don't think Carol Folt was. I don't think Mike Bone was. When this new era, you have to kind of push the limits of things. Jen Cohen certainly came in and was doing that, and you need to be able to yes, I know the NCAA said this, but this is the reality, and so just go forward with it. USC didn't allow their collective to be involved in recruiting until a lawsuit came up that said, okay, you're allowed to do that now, where a lot of other schools were doing it. I would say I don't know much about it. And I got something for the War Room on this we'll put in. But in general, I don't think someone that's a lawyer that you need to be progressive with is going to be positive. So I wouldn't say that this is going to be great. Carol Folt, I don't think was great as far as sports and recruiting and stuff goes until she was. And I think she got better towards the end of her tenure, which is good. But I think you're probably better off if USC, my guess would be getting a new president as quickly as possible and not having a lawyer be your president for too long, where there's going to be a lot of changes in the sport. And, the lawyer's probably going to be more conservative about it than someone else that gets the way college sports is going. So that's just kind of my take on it.
I think that's a good take. I'll defer to you on that, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Anthony also wants to know, would you take plus 750 Arch Manning Heisman odds? I don't know. I haven't looked at any of the odds, but
no. Why not? That seems pretty good to me. Plus 750. Sat and waited his turn for a long time. Steve Sarkisian, a lot to like with that.
Texas is going to be good, I think. So, yeah. So it's.
I haven't looked though. Usually I'll place bets on three guys and some national championship ones. I did better with the national championship than the Heisman this year. I hit Caleb Williams though when he
his year
got it, but
you had Ohio State for this year. Or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. Not saying that diminish what you're saying. A lot of people.
I was nervous though during the season.
When you lose to Michigan. Cool. All right, one last one from Matthew, and it's great to see some of our Big Ten fans here especially from the Podcast with Champions coming over. So thank you, Matthew. I believe a Wisconsin fan. I think he said Oklahoma fan in the chat too, but I thought he was a Wisconsin fan.
Maybe said that to get a rise out of the other people.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew, if I got that one wrong. But if you guys have a second, triple-double, thoughts on the USC-UCLA women's basketball game? A couple of top 5 teams going as or is USC 5
I think
now?
they're 6 now.
Okay, so up there.
I definitely feel better about it now after USC just beat Ohio State than I did after that Iowa defeat. But to me, UCLA just has that team of destiny vibes, undefeated. It's not going to be an easy game for UCLA, of course, but I think they're going to win. They, to me, just seem to be playing better right now, and we'll see what happens. Of course, I'll say that, and then USC will win. But I was pretty sure that USC was going to win the Big Ten, and UCLA, what they've done, surprised me. They right now look like the better team. So I think this first game, I pick UCLA, but I wouldn't be surprised if USC was able to get a win at Pauley in a couple weeks, and they split. So we'll see what happens.
I turned on the USC Iowa game to start, and
18-1.
It was. I'm waiting. I'm like, I got to go, but I need to see a USC basket. And it took a really long time for that to happen. And then I did the same thing with the Ohio State game, and they weren't scoring either. And I was like, what is going on? If I watched it, like, is there a lid on when I watched, they weren't scoring. And then I had to go do something, and USC ends up blowing out Ohio State. So they got better after I turned it off. So maybe I won't watch this, and it'll help the team or something. But when I've watched, it's been struggle bus. Can they even score? Like, what is going on? Like, they just couldn't even score. It was like one. The Iowa, what was it? 18-1 or what was? I mean, that was pretty bad.
That was ugly. They need Juju Watkins to snap out of her funk here. She has had, for her high standards, some pretty bad back-to-back offensive games. If she can get back to normal, then I think USC, of course, will be in a great spot. But without her, it's going to be a long night potentially.
Yeah. I mean, there's some, there's pressure on her, and just to see her in the State Farm commercials and stuff, it's like there's a lot on the sophomore, but she's obviously a stud. I'm sure she'll get it rolling again. Some good basketball in LA. Now you got Luka joining the Lakers. Like, it's pretty fun. And USC and UCLA women's basketball both being good. USC's men's basketball pretty good, doing some good things. Get that win against Michigan State.
Desmond Cloud getting hurt came at the wrong time. Hopefully he's back tonight.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Penn State tonight. Yeah. So Connor will be there. We're going to let him get over to the men's basketball.
Gotta run.
All right. Let's go wrap it up. For Connor Morrissette, I am Ryan Abraham. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. If you're listening on the podcast or if you're watching on YouTube, we really appreciate it live or just seeing the replay. It's always fun to interact with everybody. And if you got another topic, email us podcast@uscfootball.com. We'll try to do it for the next time. But for Connor Morrissette, I'm Ryan Abraham. Hope you enjoy the show, and we will talk to you next time.